We have a 2003 Ford Mustang. We're going to go through the steps in replacing the fuel pump. We'll start by bleeding the pressure off the system using our pressure relief valve on our gauge. Be sure and capture the fuel into a safe container. Before beginning any repair, disconnect the negative battery cable. In order to do a proper fuel pump replacement, we need to clean the inside of the tank, and that will require the removal of the tank. Disconnect the emissions line at the front of the tank. At the rear of the tank, disconnect the two emissions lines and electrical connection. At the right side of the tank, disconnect the two vent lines and remove the fuel filler retainer. We will remove the fuel filler hose as we lower the tank. At the front of the tank, disconnect the fuel line from the fuel filter. When removing the fuel line, there may be some residual pressure. Be sure and capture this fuel into a safe container. With the fuel tank properly supported, remove the tank straps and carefully lower the tank. It's a good idea to lubricate the grommet before removing the filler tube. As you're lowering the tank, be mindful that there is a valve at the end of the filler hose that could be damaged. It's a good idea to clean the outside of the tank before removing the module assembly. This will keep any excessive debris from getting in the tank. Remove the sound dampening material to gain access to the wiring harness. Remove the fuel line using the appropriate disconnect tool. Remove the fuel pump retaining bolts. You may be required to slightly pry the flange from the tank. Remove the module reservoir by depressing the two retaining tabs. Keep in mind this reservoir may have a residual fuel. Be sure and capture this in a safe container. At this point, we need to drain the remaining fuel into a safe container and then clean the inside of the tank. We want to be sure that the tank is as clean as possible to allow a clean environment for the fuel pump. With the inside of the tank thoroughly cleaned, we're ready to install the new Airtex module assembly. The OEM pump may be configured slightly different than the new Airtex module. This does not affect the operation of the pump in any way. As you lower the module assembly into the tank, be sure and align the retaining tabs. Be sure and fully seat the module into the tank. Be sure and align the arrow with the indention in the top of the tank. Install the flange retaining bolts, torquing to 89 inch-pounds, using a crisscross pattern. Reconnect the wiring harness and position under the sound dampening material. Reconnect the fuel line, being sure to install the safety retainer. As you raise the tank into position, carefully reinstall the fuel filler tube. With the tank fully raised into position, reattach the tank straps. Reconnect the electrical connection and the two emissions lines. Reattach the fuel filler tube retainer and reattach the vent tubes. The one tube will require a new retainer that is supplied with the pump. At the front of the tank, reattach the fuel line. It's always a good idea to replace the fuel filter whenever replacing a fuel pump, and the emissions line. With the repair complete, reattach the negative battery cable. Cycle a key 2 to 3 times in order to charge the system. Start the vehicle and monitor fuel pressure, making sure it's within vehicle specifications. Now before we remove our pressure gauge, we'll shut the vehicle off and bleed the pressure using our pressure gauge, making sure to capture any fuel into a safe container.